Welcome to WagerTalk TV. I am Kelly Stewart with Marco D'Angelo and Las Vegas Chris. I'm kind of excited to talk about this game, little Big 12 matchup. Kansas State off 4 straight losses, Chris, now a 7-point underdog to the Texas Longhorns off a brutal loss at home last weekend to the Iowa State Cyclones. I'm shocked to see the line move here. It opened 10 with our friends over at Circa. I bet at 10. I bet at 9. 7 is a little scary now. This is a K-State team that gave it all they could in Waco and still lost that game last week. K-State, for lack of better words, owns Texas. I believe they've covered 9 of their last 10 versus the Longhorns. But your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I got word that a betting group really liked this game and betted hard this morning, and it's down to 7 now. Obviously, there's chaos technically in Texas. The spirit is not positive. Herman has not been successful there, and it's compounded that he's not getting any recruits there. Ohio State's out recruiting him there. The fans and the boosters are impatient, and the future's not even looking very bright for next year. They don't have a quarterback that's played that would even start next year. And a lot of people think Herman's out the door. With this dispirited attitude, you would think, Kansas City would definitely be the team to look at. When I break it down by the numbers, though, I find it really hard to back Kansas State. I mean, like you said, Kelly, 9-1 against the spread in this matchup. But what I see is a Kansas State team that runs the ball the majority of the time, facing a team that stops the run fairly well. And Texas should be able to move the ball against Kansas State. Their pass defense is 67%. Texas is supposed to be able to move the ball on both ways. And if everything goes to form, Texas really, even though they've been so overvalued all season, Texas, I'm going to look at Texas if they can get down under the 7. I think you're going to get some real value and overreaction on that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think I have to agree with you there. If this somehow hits 6.5, I may be looking towards the Longhorns as well. I get a lot of great information out of Manhattan, Kansas, and K-State's had some issues of their own. Obviously, Chris Kleiman is there to stay, but, some locker room issues and then 4 straight losses makes it really hard to want to love this Wildcats team in this situation at home. Marco D'Angelo, you and I actually joked about this one before we filmed Bet on it earlier. We went back and forth a little bit, but I'm excited to hear what you finally came up with for this matchup.
Well, Kelly, as we talked about, sitting at 4-1 with Kansas State, motivational edge, you got to give it to Kansas State. They got the chance to get back to 500. The only problem with that is the only reason that they got to get back to 500 is, as you said, they lost 4 in a row. More importantly, through those losses, with the exception of last week, prior to last week, and you can confirm this or not, I heard that they put on the back of milk cartons the Kansas State offense in Kansas State looking for it because it has been missing 10, 18, and 0 points in 3 straight games. Now, in some conferences, they play defense, so you'd say, well, they just faced a lot of good defenses. This is the Big 12. There's not a lot of good defenses. They played one good defense in there, and that's West Virginia, who plays very well. Iowa State, middle-of-the-road defense, maybe the second best, but not overpowering. But to 0 points against Iowa State, come on. That's my concern here. For Texas, the narrative anytime you talk about a Texas game is who's the dog? That's what you want to know, because everybody knows that Coach Herman, when he was at Houston before and then when he came to Texas, he's been great as an underdog, but not so much as a favorite. But in this spot, I'm just worried about this Kansas State team if they can score enough points. And the thing I'm going to point out about Texas is last week they lost the gut wrench for themselves. Kansas State loses a 32-31 game, and then Texas loses a 23-20 game. Now, prior to that, Texas has been a team that had scored a ton of points all year long. Texas's offense goes up and down the field. The only two teams that held them in check was West Virginia, which we said is the best defense in the Big 12, and then last week against Iowa State. Well, what I'm going to point out with Iowa State last week, that was the first game in 3 weeks. Now, we always talk about extra prep time. Having an extra week to prepare for a game is great. You get to work on things, you get to heal up people. But when you're talking about 3 weeks off, that's too long. And this year, we've had that so many times with teams involving the cancellations with COVID issues. And I think that really affected the continuity in the sharpness of Texas last week. I think they'll be better this week. I hate to delay points with Texas, but this line, the way it keeps coming down, I think there's too much value. I have to take Texas at the 7, and now it's one of those games, and this is something that Chris can talk about. When you hit the 7 number, is that going to be the floor? Is it going to go to 6.5? Obviously, I would want the 6.5, but now you're playing a guessing game. Do I wait for the 6.5 and lose the 7 and have it tick back to 7.5? I'll kick it back to Chris. In this instance, which way do you think it would go?
I think with all the past history of the underdog success in these types of matchups, you really want to have that 6.5 or kind of sit it out. The real value really takes a stronghold at 6.5. And when it's sitting at that 7, it just sort of looks like, well, that's the side that looks good, but where's the extra value? So I don't see extra value at 7.
Yeah, I would agree here, Marco. I'm looking at the WagerTalk odds screen. There is still a 7.5 available at South Point here in Las Vegas. And I know the opening number with our friends over at Circa was 10, but the rest of the market pretty much opened 9, 8.5. So I think if you like Texas, you got to wait to get it below that touchdown. As I mentioned, I have a 10 from earlier in the week with Kansas State, and I'm still not loving it. But thank you to Las Vegas Chris. Thank you to Marco D'Angelo. Make sure you guys head over to our WagerTalk YouTube channel and check out all of our other videos.